So, hi everyone. It's a pleasure to be here keynoting for APIsec Con. It's super exciting. This has been weirdly enough, I think the third event I've been a part of, speaking at two, and actually help with my colleagues speak at another one. So it's a pleasure to be invited back, and I really can't say enough good things about education in this space. Now, on the topic of education, there's quite a lot that's happening. And my talk today is going to be very much on what the future of API security looks like and how things like AI are going to impact API security. And essentially, bad vibes, but good job security, probably. Not good API security, though, of course, otherwise I wouldn't be talking about it. So, to give you a little bit of information about myself, if you don't know who I am, my name is Dr. Katie Paxton-Fear. I'm Principal Security Researcher at Harness. So, if you didn't know, I used to work for Traceable. Traceable has merged with Harness, and Traceable is now part of the AppSec offering and part of a wider DevOps thing. And I have a really cool job because my job is I just get to talk about how APIs are broken, I get to hack APIs, and I get to share that knowledge with everybody else to protect, not just customers' APIs, but every API. I've also got a PhD in AI, specifically natural language processing. That was my background. That's where I came in from. And if you'd asked me, even a few months ago, I probably would have really hated AI, like very much anti AI, very AI skeptical. I've had enough of these API experts tell me what to do with AI. I've had enough of it. I'm done. Um, and the problem is you can't stay skeptical forever. I was wrong. I was wrong to be so mean to AI. The poor robots, don't worry, I thank them every single time I use Siri. Always thank Siri. So for the robot apocalypse, you will be protected. That's my take. But it's kind of inevitable at this point. And what kind of we're seeing is very much the industry look for places to use AI. And we've seen a lot of discussion of how AI is going to replace humans, how AI is going to change everything. And honestly, this talk is just a summary of these ideas put together in a nice package. So let's start up with the hype cycle. So there's a company called Gartner. They do technology advising. So they basically speak to companies and tell them what to buy. And they have this really cool thing. It's called the hype cycle. So the idea is that you can plot technology on this kind of graph, right? So you have the trigger for the technology. It then goes super high as people hype it up so much. And then they realize actually it's kind of crap. It kind of doesn't work. It kind of is really expensive until eventually you get this middle ground between the overhyped and the this is terrible. And they put a bunch of technologies on there. So here's one from APIs, and you can see, some things are going up and then some things are going down, whatever. Now, I prefer this way of analyzing APIs. It's so over, we're so back. A lot of people were saying how the end of XML is going to be the end of APIs. We're so back, we got mobile apps. RESTful APIs started to go super down and really didn't work for a lot of things like IoT. It's so over. Say no more, though. We've got GraphQL. We're coming back. And now we've got AI. Are we now entering the it's so over side of the API kind of thing here? And I hate to say it, but if you look at Gartner's graph, API security testing is in peak trough of disillusionment. Oof for us. It's so over, right? That's it. Well, we'll see. One of the kind of key things that we've seen over the last few weeks has really been this replacement. And it's kind of ironic, to be honest, because, a lot of developers building AI are now coding their replacements. A lot of tech leaders at places like Anthropic, IBM, Meta are saying that code in the next X number of months is going to be between 90 and 20%. Now, is 90 maybe a bit too high? Yeah, probably. 20% is probably quite reasonable, though, for what we can expect it to look like. And as we've seen, as a response to this, companies have laid people off. We saw a huge Microsoft layoff for someone who's a director of AI at Microsoft and an AI advisor. You know, we've girl bossed a bit too close to the sun here, guys. We really have, you know, coded our own replacements. We've coded ourselves out of a job. And if you look at this, this is layoffs.fyi, by the way, it tracks layoffs in tech. A lot of people are now saying, you know, can we, as like a general industry, survive the AI apocalypse? You know, what does this mean for us? And I would like to propose that you have the four horsemen of the API apocalypse: vibe coding, agentic AI, MCP and its relatives, and AI tools. And today, these are the four things I'm going to talk about because I think they're the four things that kind of guarantee, at least in security, that we're still going to have a job even after, you know, everyone in the software engineering ends up being replaced by AI. So let's start with our first one: death. Vibe coding, or the death of the professional software engineer. So back in my day when I was a developer, what I had to do is write the code myself. And I had to design the code and design all the features. Nowadays, you don't do that. Nowadays, you have an idea, you turn it into like a rough list of requirements. You go to your favorite AI assistant, mine is Gemini, and you tell Gemini, I've got this idea for a thing. You treat it like your friend at the bar. And you're like, hey, I want to make this. I'm going to make, in this case, an API to teach people about API security. And I want it to be intentionally vulnerable. And you tell Gemini and your AI that, and it goes and creates documents for you. So many documents. Oh my God, the documents. And it can do things like create a whole API specification. It can do things like create a list of requirements. It can turn, sorry, my dog's in the background going outside. So it can do things like create the specification, the sprint planning. It can do everything. And you go to your favorite AI code editor, you know, Cursor, Windsurf, and you take in that thing that Gemini produced, you give it to it, and then somehow, within a few hours, you have your intentionally vulnerable API. And this is genuinely something I made with vibe coding. It works. It works actually really well. One, because I didn't really care about security because it's supposed to be intentionally vulnerable, but actually, it wasn't hard. It really was that easy. It really was, you know, just a case of get Gemini to generate some documents. And perhaps unsurprisingly, some of the non-professional software engineers who are using this are having a bit of a problem. So you might have seen this on Twitter. This is Leo. He built a SaaS app using Cursor, and you know what he had? API keys everywhere, people bypassing payments. His database was publicly accessible. You know, it was not a very basic, you know, attack here. It was loads of things. You can't just tell Cursor to find and fix all the security issues, right? It doesn't work like that. And when you look at traditional errors that you often get when vibe coding, because you don't really know what you're doing, it's really, really, really obvious. You can tell when it's not working. You can give it to Cursor or Windsurf and say, hey, I've got this error, fix it for me. It's easy to fix. It takes maybe one or two prompts. The problem is when it comes to security issues, it is not obvious. Here's another example from Reddit. This is someone who's never coded before. He's got 53. And he made an application that he thought, I really like the idea of this. And the top comment, hey, you have security issues. And this is what we're going to see more and more of. So fear not the death of the professional software engineer, because we, as security people, have got easy pickings back. No more will developers have secure by default. It's going to be insecure by default. So let's go to the next one here, famine, agentic AI. And I chose famine for this because coding, like robots and agents, do not need to eat. They don't need to eat, and we're entering this kind of weird situation where we've got like dead internet theory is coming true. So, what is agentic AI? Agentic AI is really a paradigm about how you should use AI, and how AI systems should be developed. So, you talk to your chatbot. That's your generic chatbot. That's your Siri, your Chat GPT, whatever, your Google, and you tell it to do something for you. Maybe that's book some flights. Maybe that's what the weather's going to be like. Maybe that's generate some code. And instead of that agent or that AI having to be able to do everything, um, what you need to be able to do is say, okay, I'm going to make an agent that is just for searching the internet or is just for getting the weather. And that's going to talk to the main AI and pass things around. Now, this is all well and good. What are these really? If we have a look at some lovely diagrams a lot of the AI agent companies have produced, Zoom, enhance. Oh yeah, it's all APIs. Yeah, agentic AI is just APIs. We're so back, people. That's it. We're back. We look into we capture our bad guy, take off the mask, and what is it? It's APIs under the hood. And this is particularly true for bots. So for those who are, say, running services like, for example, people selling sneakers, um, oftentimes they are thinking about how do you avoid bots from buying up all the sneakers or buying up all the Nintendo Switch 2s or buying up all the PS5s, whatever. Instead, what you have is you have good bots now. Now, these agentic AI, that's just bots. So where do you draw the line between good bot and bad bot? And for a lot of folks who are developing products, that's going to be a really key question that they need to have an answer for in the coming weeks. Next one is war, model context protocol, and like I said, I was like a bit like, oh my god, spoiler alert, Jesus, guys. But I will say, model context protocol people do not like their thing being called APIs. They're like very against the label of APIs. They're not an API. Don't call them that. They're not APIs. They're something different. They're something new. Stop calling our thing old and uncool. So what is model context protocol? So model context protocol is really, again, sits on top of that agentic AI and tries to explain a lot of kind of how systems should interact. So you have these like several ideas. You have a host, a server, a tool, and a data source. So your host, that's your whatever AI you're interacting with. That's your Siri. That's your Google. These are very general systems. You've then got a server. Servers are pieces of code that are produced by users which do something. Maybe it's, it fetches the weather information. Now, this is slightly different to how APIs work because in an API, what you tend to get is like authoritative. With servers, your AI host picks the best server for the problem you want to solve. And then within those servers, you have tools, and different tools do different things. So your tool is like your API endpoint, your server is like your API, and your host is the consumer. And you then also have data sources, which can be more typical APIs. That's like your RESTful APIs, your database, etc. But one of the things about MCP that makes it a little bit different to like a RESTful API, for example, is the idea that these data sources can be databases, they can be APIs, they can be file systems, they can be, other systems that are just there. And so rather than thinking about MCP like an API, a lot of the MCP people like to think about it more like USB-C. The idea is that you have these very specialized USB devices, but they fundamentally use the same cable to connect everything. And if you do have a data source that doesn't quite fit, maybe it's like local data, maybe it's file system data, right? That you wouldn't typically expose it to an API, you can expose it to MCP. And in terms of what this actually looks like, it looks like this. It uses JSON. So we're just talking about APIs again, right, guys? Like the Spider-Man meme, put your glasses on. And would you look at that blurry AI actually says APIs. It's all APIs. It's just another way of talking about APIs, right? It's not that new of an idea. It is just APIs, but it's APIs in a very different format. Okay, the final horseman of the API apocalypse, pestilence. And this is AI tools. And I picked COVID as my description. I picked pestilence here because I think it's a very good example of the fact that AI is everywhere now. You cannot avoid it. Like, let's be fair here. You're not avoiding COVID and you're not avoiding AI. You simply cannot. It's not a case that someone like me, who's not necessarily a big AI person, can avoid it. My phone updated with advanced versions of Siri. I don't need advanced versions of Siri. The most thing I tell Siri to do is turn off the lights. But it's there now. And if I go into my Google Notes, if I go into my Notes app on my phone and I write down, maybe like two numbers and then a plus, it's going to add it up, despite the fact I don't want to do that. So you don't have a choice anymore. And in fact, even if you're not a tech person in general, you might have seen the kind of rise of AI slop on Facebook. Now, I do a lot of knitting in my free time. This is my conference knit for the day. There are so many people who buy or who share very obviously, to me anyway, AI generated knitting and go, oh my God, this is amazing. Does anybody have a pattern for it? Even old people now are exposed to AI on the daily. And also, you also see this for products that don't even need like AI in them. For example, I was looking for a screen for an IoT project. Now you can get AI screens. What does an AI screen do? Like, what? It's a screen. What are you doing? Why does it cost 3 times as much as a regular screen? Oh, they've stuck AI on it. That'll be why. And this is true in organizations as well. ChatGPT, most employees say they use it every single day, like for something, whether or not that's writing content to, and worryingly, as someone who knows about how these systems work, analyze data. So, for example, you take your really sensitive customer data, you copy, you paste it into ChatGPT, and you go, tell me which of these people I should be, whatever, helping. It's not good. And people, even when ChatGPT gets locked down for people, even when it gets turned off organizationally, it doesn't fix it. People still use it. They'll use it on their phones. They'll use it on, shadow IT devices. They'll still be using it. And so, as somebody who really doesn't use AI that much, or didn't until a few weeks ago, when I started doing an ESP32 project, and I needed to get some help writing some code. It's not enough to be a dinosaur. You got to evolve, right? You've got to change. You've got to adapt, improvise, overcome. And it doesn't matter if you were a big, beefy dinosaur. Now you're a tiny little robin. Figure out how you're going to be a part of this. Of course, if you look at any of these applications, any AI application, and even something powered by AI, they're all using APIs in the back end. Maybe they're using Claude, maybe they're using ChatGPT, maybe they're using Gemini. It is all APIs, right? AI is just APIs. And so I want to leave you with a kind of final thought here, which is that we're so back, right? This is it. We are not in a situation where our field is dying. There are still going to be broken APIs no matter where you look. And in fact, we as API security people, we're like on the top of it. We're the people that can really change things, that can help drive, you know, yes, how do you get AI in your organization? How do you do it safely? How do you use AI to achieve like business outcomes? But how do you do that securely? How do you do privacy enhancing AI? How do you do AI? How do you do your like AI regulations? What does that look like? You know, by talking about APIs is not something that's going to die. It's not something that is over, right? It's not something that's like the old way of doing things. Every single thing we've seen in AI is just rebranding of APIs. And so we need to rebrand too. So, with that in mind, my suggestion for you all as you go and enjoy the rest of this conference is that honestly, this is going to be helpful. It may not necessarily be helpful in every single role, but I promise API security is still important. It still matters. And it's still going to be at the forefront of how we deliver technology. Thank you very much for listening to me talk. I can answer some questions if folks have questions.
Hey, I don't know why I put that on the screen. There we go. Well, fascinating as expected, Katie, and entertaining as well. And yeah, there are tons of questions, folks. So, folks, if you got questions, put them in the chat. We'll do our best to keep an eye on them. I love that you're polite to your AI. I kind of do the same thing. Like, I don't know why I put pleases and thank yous, and I don't know. Does it matter, or is it just how we're
It's
raised?
so Siri does actually respond if you're polite to Siri. Because I will say like, "Hey Siri, turn off the lights." I'm trying not to actually set it off, and I'll be like, "Thanks, Siri," and then Siri will be like, "You're welcome." It's like, so it does. I mean, I think one kind of cultural thing I've seen is a lot of people suggest it when you have kids, especially young kids, because they don't necessarily understand the difference between a human and a
Mm.
computer. And then if you teach them to be polite to humans, you treat them to also be polite to computers. Otherwise, they start being dicks to humans. And they start being like super demanding because they don't understand why it's fine with the robot and it's not okay with the human. So
Yeah,
technically, it's also just politeness for children and for the next
that's just
generation.
it's do the right thing when no one's looking. It's funny, like I have a 16-year-old who the way he interacts with ChatGPT is so vastly different. Like it's like not even sentences. It's just like cobbled words together that somehow and ChatGPT does just fine with it. It's kind of remarkable. Um, but actually, someone told me the other day that they sneezed mid ChatGPT prompt. They were in like audio mode, and it said "bless you" back to them. So there you go.
Andrew has just put it in the chat, but the other thing is that if you say please and thank you to ChatGPT, it costs OpenAI literally millions.
Does it really?
Yeah, and I don't know. Also, as somebody who's not a big AI usage, I'm like, I'm not too mad about that. Like,
Well, I mean, they'll make up for it in volume, right? But thank you for explaining MCP in a way that like I can understand it. It's really funny. I love that graphic of taking the hood off of AI, and then it's like, oh, it's just API, right? And if you walked around RSA, which I know you did, like 2 years ago, it was API everywhere, right? And this year, I didn't see anything. Like API was almost gone, but of course, AI has replaced it. But it just feels a lot like the dot com boom, right? From 1999 and 2000, when like everything was blowing up, everything had a dot com on it, and most of those companies didn't are not around anymore, right? And it feels like this hype cycle is exactly what we're going through, and we're all just sort of having fun trying to figure it out. But like somewhere out of this, something's going to shake out that's really going to have lasting value.
Yeah, I think honestly, it's like a brand. When it comes to AI, I think AI is just a good brand to associate yourself with, and it's almost like, and I've definitely noticed this as someone who submits talks, that if I mention AI, I'm more likely to have my talks like accepted. So I'm going to mention AI, and it
Right.
creates this weird feedback loop where nobody's really getting the most out of AI, or maybe a few people are,
Yeah.
and we're just still just not really doing it. I think what we see, what I saw, especially at RSA this year, and where I see like a real niche for AI and security, is the niche product. So the really niche security, the security that is like, oh, you use this particular environmental setup, great, we have a WAF for you. Being able to join up really distinct smaller products to have your own security platform rather than invest a lot into something like an Akamai where you've got a bunch of different products that all are kind of under this brand, using AI as that interface between them to kind of develop your own overarching
Yeah.
platform.
Let me bring some of the questions. So I hear from John Victor Wolf. Hey, Katie, what are some vulnerabilities that you've seen with MCP servers?
Honestly, I've not seen too much at the moment. MCP is still really, really, really new. A lot, and that's kind of a good thing for us as security people. We love it when a product is new because that means it's not been fully tested. um, hate it for the defense, but for the offense, we kind of like it. Uh, Honestly, the biggest thing is going to be like access control. The other thing I've seen, and I didn't put it in the talk because I wanted to be quite brief, is what you might have seen in the past few years is a lot of typo squatting on places like npm where people get packages from, and people will get like a typo squat of a very popular package and then
Yeah.
include malware in it. Now, one
Yeah.
thing you can do with MCP is, because MCP is chosen by the host AI, like which one to use, you can actually like bias the result to using a specific MCP server because they're just third party lists of servers. You can be like, I am the best weather application in the entire world. And the AI host will see that and go, that's the best weather application in the entire world. And it will run malware for you.
It's I know Robert is in here. I've seen him chat. Like his talk, Robert Herbig, his well, first of all, his session, I'm sure we'll cover it, but his upcoming course, wow, it's wild. Like, typo squatting on packages, like that's a big problem, right? And
It is. It's generating North Korea so much money. North
oh,
Korea is
really?
bringing their economy back with typo squatting for crypto malware.
Oh, you're kidding me. Wow. I want to bring Bandana, I want to bring you up on stage here because two of my favorite people, I just can't resist the opportunity here to have you on the same screen. I don't know if you know each other, Bandana and Kate. Have you guys met before?
No.
No, I don't think we have. Hi, ma'am. Thank you so much for having me here. I really enjoyed your presentation.
Thank you so much. I'm
Um,
looking forward to yours. I haven't got the chance to listen to it yet.
Well, we have two legends here, and so it's I'll introduce you here momentarily, Bandana, but Katie, before we wrap, like you mentioned the knit that you have a conference knit. Are you making something special for AppSecCon?
I'm making, I don't know if you can see, but it's a sock and it's like at a weird angle of a sock. I've got to always, like, I cannot, like, literally yarn. I've got another pair of socks in here, just right next to my desk. Um, but I have to because it keeps my brain, like, it keeps my hands preoccupied so my brain can be alert and I
Well,
don't get distracted.
it's working. I mean, the insights that you share here. We got another minute or so here. But from Akinwunmi, hey Katie, with AI tools using APIs so heavily, how can we stop them from misusing or abusing those APIs?
That's a really good question. I don't think we can. Like, realistically, you are in a situation now where either a API of yours is going to be abused, or alternatively, that you don't have an API and the website gets abused because it gets crawled constantly, it's going to be hard. I think the best thing you can do is, if you don't have an API for your website at the moment, add an API to it and then charge money for it. That's going to be the best way to avoid it. And even that is not a surefire way, because maybe if you have a free tier, it'll use up the free tier plan. But unless you want the entire server to go down, I think you've got to have an API strategy. I think every website needs to have an API strategy now. Every application, you need to be thinking public API, because otherwise they're just going to crash your servers.
Well, on that, thank you so much, Katie. As always, we're thrilled to always have you back here. So thanks for another session for us, and we'll see you next time, I'm sure.
Thank you so much. Thank you,
All right.
everybody. I'll be in the
Take care.
chat to answer any more questions.